so that those who would like to get into the market firstly and never been there before don't feel antagonized or don't feel threatened for any reason whatsoever.
My question is to Gop Kumar. Continuing from where our competitor left, 2% of entire India population invest in stock markets. That means we have an entire base of 98% who stay away from stock market. Now Kotak Securities is seen as a leader in its category. So is this the first step of getting the 98% and expanding the market? How are you reaching out to retail investors? And is there any initiative for active participation of retail investors?
Yeah, I think you asked a very broad-based, I think I will take half an hour to explain everything. But just to put a few things in play, as I said, there is only 2% of people of Indian population actually invest in the markets, and substantial portion of the money is still lying in bank FDs. That's why the bank stocks do very well, right? Just to give you some view on that. I think we as market leaders, we are very, very clear that how we need to improve our reach. First of all, our focus is that we will move to smaller cities. That's where the penetration is lower. Second, which I spoke about earlier in my opening remark, is that the technology which helps people to participate and make the trades very simpler and make understanding markets very simpler. That's what we'll try to put an initiative. In fact, we are the first guys to come with a mobile trading platform where today you can seamlessly trade through a mobile. So that's what happened. So if you really look at the revolution, what mobile has happened from typically 6-7 years back, used to have internet parlors, right? And I don't think you can see it now. I think it is because of a number of reasons, because the hardware cost has gone down and your cost of telecom has come down, the internet usage charge has gone down. And so people started participating on the markets through internet platform. So our belief is that the mobile will be a large piece. It will make sure that more and more people will participate through mobile. I think that's what will happen. I think that's one of the initiatives we are taking very seriously. Third important thing is that, which is the most critical part for us, is that educating customers. I think we are the market leaders. We have programs. One program which we unveiled today is the initiative through bookstores. We will have a couple of ones which will announce very shortly, which will clearly focus on attracting new set of investors in the market. And we also strongly believe that with the regulators like SEBI and the exchanges, their role largely is to educate the investors. And we as intermediaries, our objective is to get more retail investors. So it is function of reach, the function of technology, and is the function of how transparent we as the brokers work in the market. I think from that perspective, I think we have taken a big leap, and this is the small steps towards that. And that's why I said in the beginning that if you look at the book has a workbook, and it's very interesting. I think unlike you can find a couple of books on equity investing, a couple of books, and I've gone through a couple of books before getting this book right. It doesn't have workbook, so it becomes very inefficient for people to note down their financial goals, financial plan, what are the investments are. I think people still like to scribble on a piece of pencil or a piece of paper, but I think this keeps us a record for everybody. Second is that you also want to the step towards getting more retail investors. We said that everybody who buys the book gets a free broking account. Actually, the cost of this book is 500 rupees, but our charge of opening a broking account is 150 rupees. We are waiving it off completely. So, in fact, it's minus 250 rupees book. So that's the cost of this book. So it's worthwhile. So you can redeem that 750 rupees and you can open an account with this.
And then
I hope I have answered it.
Yeah, it should go up from 2% to maybe 20%.
That's right.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on this initiative and on this book that you have launched. I think it's going to be very helpful for retail investors. My question to you is, for a retail investor, first time investor, would this be a right time to invest? First question. Part of that is, what would be the right amount as a middle class investor, and in what sectors would you recommend? Would you recommend as a percentage breakup certain sectors in which we could invest, and what kind of returns should we expect and in what duration?
Okay.
Yeah, so as I said, this is the right time to start investing. In fact, investing is more about longer term investing. So any time is an appropriate time. We are not trying to time the market in that sense. So yes, but leaving that aside, yes, this is a right time to start investing. As I said, the next couple of months, we are expecting the markets to be pretty much range bound, and this should be used as an opportunity to start investing in the equity markets with a 9 to 12 month kind of a horizon. The sectors, if I have to speak specifically on them, if India has to grow by 9% in real terms and 14-15% in terms of GDP in nominal terms, the India story will definitely appear attractive, and the sectors which are related more to the India story, or which are proxies for India, that sector should be the ones which should be preferred. So say a sector like a banking, the Indian economy cannot grow without banking sector growing. So that is one sector which we like. The capital goods and the infrastructure sector is something which is another story which should do very well over the next 9 to 12 months. And apart from that, a sector like IT, which is though export oriented, is doing very well right now. So these are some of the major sectors, apart from few others which are smaller ones, where you should start investing at this point of time. The advice is that in terms of putting money, since you are not a regular investor, which is what I assume, and you do not have day-to-day touch of the market, probably you should not invest a large part of your overall savings or your investable surplus into the markets. Maybe a portion of that can be started with, and then as and when you gain more confidence, or as and when you become more conversant with the markets, that's when you should start putting more and more money into the secondary markets. You can put some money into the mutual funds, yes, that can be a strategy, because there are fund managers who do invest on your behalf. But say direct equities, you can have a smaller proportion right now, and then start increasing the proportion as and when you gain confidence.
What sectors can I begin with, and what percentages? You could just...
As I said, the banking, the capital goods, and the information technology are the three sectors which you should invest in. And invest in more of the large stocks in these sectors, because those are more resilient companies, and those will be the better bets. In terms of return expectation, that was another question which you asked. Normally over a period of time, markets have given about 15% on an average return annually, and this is what you can expect. If you invest in the right stocks at the right time, probably you can get higher returns, but expectation is about 15 to 20% annual returns you can expect from equity markets.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a savings account, and I have an FD, but I am very scared of investing in stock markets. Maybe for the jargons, but for the perception that it has, that it has a high amount of risk involved. So if I have to start investing in the stock market, is there perhaps a right age, right income bracket? What is it that I really look at, or I should know that, okay, I'm ready to invest? Because clearly with the level of inflation, FD or a savings account will not really help me in the long term. So what is it? How can you demystify this for me?
There is a good amount of correlation between the age and the risk. Okay, what risk you can take. I think first thing what you need to do is that you need to do some level of financial planning. That is your goal setting. What do you want to do? For example, some people, if they make 100 rupees, they're happy. Some people 200 rupees, they're not happy. Some people 1000 rupees, they're not happy. But some people 50 rupees, they're happy what they get. I think more important is that when you are investing in a hard-earned money, whether it is equities, debt is typically your FDs, you need to have goal-based investing. I think that's very important. If you are, for example, we have financial planning tools available, which you have covered in this book, which speaks about financial planning. I think you should go through the financial planning. You'll understand what is the amount of risk you take. What we always advise people is that you should start early investing. I think typically what happens is that the earning age starts typically in India is around 22 years. In India, people start earning. But what typically people do, which I also did the same thing, is that you just blow your money out. And at the age of 35, 40, you start realizing that you don't have money in your bank account. And you're not able to take a risk because you have to buy a house, you have to buy a car, you have to educate your children. I think it is very critical that you need to do a financial planning in place. That's the first thing you need to do. And you need to speak to an advisor, or buy this book also. You will get able to get some idea about financial planning. Then you need to go about based on your risk. what I'm saying is that early investing is one way to create large wealth, which most people don't do it. I think initial days when you start investing in equities, you should start investing through an SIP route at the beginning, and you will get the feel of the markets that point of time. You can track it, and SIPs are a fantastic tool to invest in the markets, because there is a fund manager who manages a small amount of money. Today, even 100 rupees SIPs are allowed in the market today. Some of the fund houses are allowing to do that. Start with SIPs, and you will get confidence in the market as an equity as an asset class. Then start looking at stocks and get your fundamentals right before investing. I think that's what I'd like to tell you. So to sum up the summary, I think it is a goal-based. You make a goal-based, saying that this is the age which I may get married. There may be kids. This is education planning. Today, education costs huge amount of money. So you know that after 20 years, there's a huge liability going to come. If you have a daughter, you need to get married off, and you have to pay dowry. You know that I'm willing to pay so much of dowry. So you please need to do a planning properly. Otherwise, you will get into a large amount of debt. So what I'm saying is, the financial planning is more important. I think that's the way to look at it.
Taking a note from there, maybe we can financially plan everything else, but we can't comment on the dowry aspect, because then there'll be criminal charges filed. So
I'm just joking.
Yeah, okay. Coming to the next question, please.
I have a question to both of you.
Yeah.
Like you said, stock market is a place where you create wealth. At Kotak, how do you help investors to create wealth?
See, basically from our side, in terms of the advising or supporting the client, we have got various methods by which we support clients and allow them or help them in creating wealth. As she rightly said, like there is a lot of jargon involved for a beginner or even for a nascent or a small investor. It's very difficult to understand the intricacies of the market. First of all, there is a lot of jargon involved. The second thing is trying to study different things. And on top of it, after having done all that, if something happens in Japan or maybe in Libya, then all the studies go wrong. So what I mean to say is that there is a lot of uncertainty, there is a lot of confusion in the minds of people once when they invest or they want to invest. We try to help them. We have got different types of advisory functions. First of all, we have got the fundamental research, which we have about 10 people into research. We cover various sectors, about 15 sectors, so that is one. Apart from that, we have got the technical research, so they do advise on the timing of the market, the exact entry and exit points. We have also got a derivative research team. We have got a very well educated and qualified dealers who actually deal with you on a day-to-day basis. So they help you in making decisions. Market information comes to you because of them. So all these are the factors by which we try to support the client or help the client and try to demystify the various jargons and the various events which come through, and thus try to help them make money. So that's what I feel, and Gop can maybe add more factors.
Apart from that, the most important thing is that what is the technology platform what we're going to give to the client, and what are the client interface tools available. I think as a market leaders, we're the leading stockbroking company in India. Typically, we have a couple of platforms which is user-friendly to the investors. So there are multiple channels where you can get advisory. One important thing what he spoke about, Bipin spoke about, is about dealers assisting customers to invest. Second is that you have independent investing, where there is a good platform given on the web-based model, where you can, if you are able to research your own stocks, you can always put. I think that's very important, because that gives you a good portfolio trackers, where people are able to monitor the portfolio day-to-day basis. Third important thing is that if all these both are not available, you can call my contact center and place the order through that. Our contact center capabilities are typically, you can speak 10 languages. So it covers 10 languages, so you can speak to them. And I think the good combination of technology and the combination of the research, what we cover, that's what Kotak is known in the market today. I think that's where we try to create wealth for customers. And our objective is very, very clear, that we come with the newer themes every year. We identify newer themes which are typically long-term in nature, and we build portfolios based on that. So we have 1 month portfolios where customers can look at. We have 3 months portfolio. We have a fortnightly portfolio. We have a weekly portfolio. So all are based on particular themes, based on opportunities what is available in the market. I hope I have answered the query. Right?
We're taking the next question.
Hi, good evening. This question comes down to the banking sector, and I think would be more focused on to Dipen. We know that the banking sector in India is driven by very strong fundamentals. This has been the reason why we have been able to withstand the global meltdown. Now, we know post the budget that RBI is encouraging new banking licenses, and we know that financial inclusion still is a mantra of the budget. But do you think going forward in India, as we know that banking is known as a big boys game, so as the telecom sector, do you think going forward banking sector will witness a consolidation and there will be major 2-3 players who constitute the large cap right now that will emerge?
So basically, in terms of banking, as you rightly said, financial inclusion is still a mantra, or that's the goal. So it does indicate that there is significant amount of potential. In terms of penetration, banking has not reached a large number of villages or towns or smaller cities even. Smaller cities, yes, but a large number of villages and towns are still underbanked. So first of all, the sector has to grow and expand rapidly. And it's after that that we can start talking about consolidation. As of now, there is a lot of space for lot many banks and even existing banks to expand their coverage because we are significantly underbanked. So I see the consolidation will happen, especially there are weaker players in each and every sector. So down the line, yes, the weaker players will get acquired by the stronger players. But in terms of large scale consolidation, I think there is still time because the potential is huge, the penetration is very low, and there is enough space for even newer players to come in and even existing players to grow at a very, very rapid pace, as even what Kotak Mahindra is doing right now.
And my second question would be that we all know the stories of scripts like VIP, Titan Industries, Delta Corp, more so because of the person who is holding those scripts. Now, amid this, the basic question lies, how do we identify the multi-baggers of tomorrow?
I think that is what I indicated partly in my address as to there are some events or some or maybe say events or maybe some significant milestones which a company might achieve in its history, because of which it will go to the next level and the third level. A VIP Industries 2 years back or 3 years back was nowhere near what it is currently. But then there were milestones, there were events, there were strategies of the management which changed the horizon for the company and made it go to the second level and the third level. So if we are able to identify those events or identify those changes in strategies or reaching of various milestones, that is, and if we start investing before the company reaches that level, we can see that our wealth will rise exponentially after reaching that. We all know VIP, what level was it a couple of years back and right now what it is. Like we have got examples of companies like an Infosys which have given returns which are in fact mind-boggling. We cannot even count the number of times the returns have multiplied. So trying to do some research on the company, trying to identify those events, and if we are able to identify those, I think we can make significant amount of gains. So the scripts which you mentioned and the people who are owning the scripts have probably identified it much better than others, and that's why they are holding large proportion of equity in that company. So I think it's important to do that, but for that obviously we need to know the company and several more things about the company.
Sir, I wanted to know one thing from you. You recently said that the economic conditions and political conditions and natural conditions affect the market very well. May I know why does this happen? Why does the political conditions or natural conditions affect the economy of the country? Why can't we prevent them from being affecting us? Many times we see budget, anything like that happens, we see the prices of markets go up or come down. Why does this happen?
See, basically in terms of the political events, if I have to say without referring to what has happened in the recent past, normally politics or the government is the one which is a driving force behind the growth of the economy. The government invests in infrastructure, the government gives various concessions, frames various policies to increase consumption. So if the government itself is the one which is responsible for a large part of the economic growth, then obviously the policies of the government are very, very important to the growth of the economy. And the stock market follows what the economy does. If the economy is doing well, stock markets will go up. If the economy is not doing well, the stock markets will not go up. So that's why political issues are very important. If the decision making of the government is pretty slow, or if it has stopped, or there are wrong decisions which are being made, then obviously the market doesn't take to it very lightly. So whatever has happened in the recent past, there have been some concerns about the pace of the decision making and things like that, because of which the markets have not taken it very lightly. In terms of the international events or some of the natural events, natural calamities, obviously it is beyond our control, so we cannot do much about preventing them or making them happen. Like whatever has happened in Japan is obviously beyond anybody's imagination and control. But what that natural calamity could do is it can significantly alter the demand supply situation globally. And India being a part of the globe, obviously we also will be impacted either positively or negatively. So the natural events, if they are major in nature, and more importantly, and closer home, the political developments do play a very important part in terms of how the markets perform.
But the investors should know about the certain conditions of the political conditions, and they can set up their mind basically perfectly. And whatever the strategies of government are, we are going to be perfect about that strategies, and we are going to make the market grow up only. So why can't they do that? Why can't the economy can do that change in the market?
No, government and RBI obviously are focused on growth, right? So, but there are certain events which are beyond their control also. Like as I said, the natural event which has happened. Like what has happened in Libya has increased the crude price by about 30% in the last few months or few weeks. Now India is a net importer of crude oil. We import about 75% of our crude oil requirement, right? So if the crude price internationally it has to go up, then obviously it is going to impact India. So that is something which is beyond control. Now on its part, what we see in the recent budget, what the finance minister has tried to do, is that he has moved very aggressively on reforms. Right? He has tried to attack the inflation which has come about in the last 6 months. We all know that we are all impacted significantly by inflation. And the inflation is much higher than what the headline numbers suggest. So it has tried to attack the inflation. It has tried to bring in more reforms. And it is trying to do whatever it can for the economic growth of the country. Like India at 9% next year will be the second fastest growing economy in the world. So it's not that the government is not doing anything. It is doing its things rightly. But the markets have its own way of functioning. They have own ways of looking at things. And depending on the timing, the markets move up and down. And once again, at the cost of repetition, there are some things which are even beyond the control of the RBI and government, where it can do very little. So we take into account all these factors before actually making an investment decision. But suffice it to say that the government is working on reforms, it is working on growth rates, and we see it as a very clear process.
Before we take the next question, just taking it on a little line, which is not going too tangent away from the same subject. As we said, there are certain factors which are just beyond control. I would like to have you, if you could share a little bit on the thought that as regulators, SEBI coming in, what efforts have they put in? You could share a few words on the efforts that they have put in to get things streamlined, to build in the confidence of the investor. I think that will bring the Aam Aadmi, as I said, the common man, a little bit more closer to the market. So I'm sure we've got a lot of effort put in. So we could speak also about the efforts put in by SEBI and regulators.
Just to give you a view, I think SEBI is our regulator for stock markets, and they're the most efficient regulator across the globe. I think they have done a fantastic job in terms of regulation, because if you really look at 15 years back or 20 years back, the brokers are supposed to have non-transparent rates, and that's what is to happen in the marketplace. Today, I think after the Ketan Parekh issue and Ashwin Mehta's issue in '94, I think there's a sea change happened in terms of the SEBI, the way they regulated it. I think they have a multifunctional job to do. What they're trying to do now is that they are regulating the intermediaries like us, which are pushing us to do more transparent deals and make us very highly compliant. That's one. Second important thing is that investor education. I think they take a huge leap towards educating investors and giving a confidence to investors that this Indian markets are very safe and sound, because They strongly believe that it's all hard-earned money, what people put money, and you can't have thieves or people who beat the processes or the systems and take the customers' money out. In that sense, I think regulator has done an extremely good job in terms of regulating. Third important thing what SEBI is trying to do is to get open up the economy in terms of the regulation, so that have people just not Indians participating in the India story. They also want global money coming to markets, and so that markets can grow. If you typically look at 15 years back data, you find very interesting is that there was so minimal participation. Today, I think the participation rate has really gone up, and they also work on technologies. They work with the exchanges to make sure that all the brokers are compliant. They push us to introduce one of the best technologies. I think they have a multifold task. I think the last 10 to 12 years, they've done an extremely good job as a regulator in terms of putting a regulation in place for the brokers, as well as in terms of keeping the customers' interest safe. For example, there is a very clear-cut customer grievance cell, so that any customer client has a problem with a broker or a particular trade can just write to SEBI, and as a market participant, there is a time actually specified that within 30 days I need to respond to customer, and it is monitored on daily basis. Second important thing is that before choosing a broker, you need to do a lot of work, right? So today I come from a company. Okay, this book doesn't say that how to choose a broker. For example, you go to a SEBI site and look at what are the customer complaints are there against the broker. It's very important. It's very, very important that how transparent the broker deals with the client. We being the largest stockbroker in the country, and just to give an example, we process almost 4 lakh trades a day. That's bigger than a large broker in Wall Street. We do 4 lakh trades, but the value of the trades are smaller because in India the market is still growing. As I said, we are 2% equity participation, but we have a capability of managing 4 lakh trades a day. Just imagine if we have almost 9.5 10 lakh customers. They trade almost every day in our system. So you need to look at how the registered process is there. Look at the SEBI site. SEBI openly declares these are the customer complaints against so much of brokers. And you find our name also, but you find us at 6th or 7th in the whole group, because when you manage customers, there will be some customer complaints. But as an organization, we also are very highly compliant, highly transparent organization. And we are a professional corporate body because we are subsidiary of the bank also. Kotak Mahindra Bank is a holding company. So to answer your question, I think SEBI plays a very important role in expanding markets, educating, monitoring, and more importantly, safeguarding the client's interest.
Thanks a lot. We've got time to just couple in 2 questions. Okay, third question, a final question. So we've got 2 gentlemen here, and then we'll close it with the last question from a lady.
So common man is always approaching to bank to earn something. After 3 years, what he deposit, market will give anything such assurity. After 3 years, you will get something.
See, I think I'm just taking away from the pain. See, this is a question which we always get asked, that can you guarantee returns? Okay, I think in markets there's no guarantee of returns. There's a risk associated with the returns. Most important thing what we need to do is that as long as you are in the right stocks and right sectors, you will make money. The simple fundamental is that what is the price which is shown in the market? For example, with SDFC is X price. Why does the SDFC bank is a X price? Why does the price movement happens? There is a logic behind it. For example, if corporate or a bank, for example, you said a bank or any corporate or a sector grows by 10 to 20%, that will obviously reflect in your stock price. So it's very important is that what stocks you buy, what sectors do you buy. As long as you get your stock picks right, and if the economy grows the way it is growing today at 8.5-9%, you will have a positive returns. And equity as an asset class, for example, you also need to look at what is the risk reward ratio, for example. For example, if you're looking at an FD, today the interest rate scenario is 9, so that you get 8.5-9% in FD. For a 1-year FD, you get 9.5% today. But very importantly, you should look at what type of risk you're taking. And we have seen that when the interest rate scenario is peaked, typically peaked, you find debt instrument giving you better returns, and markets usually are lower that point of time. But we see most of the time the people don't participate in the market and the markets are lower. So a lot of money moves from equity to debt that point of time. I think that's an opportunity to invest. So, and that your straight answer for that we don't assure returns. But if you are doing a good stock picking, fundamental right stocks, you will make money. You will be a positive returns.
And what we have seen over the past several years is that during a period of time, not maybe 6 months or 3 months, but over a slightly longer period of time, equities have given, as an asset class, have given the best returns across all asset classes. Right? So you might have a bank FD earning 8%, and equities, the average return has been about 15% or so per annum. Post-tax returns are even better. If you hold on for more than 1 year, the tax benefits in terms of shares, the benefit is much higher as compared to an FD. So post-tax returns in terms of equities are much better at any point of time during a specified period of time. But yes, for that, as Gop said, you need to make the right decisions, follow an approach, and then invest rather than just going by hearsay and going on tips. So as an asset class, equity is always highest return, but for every high return you also have attendant risk. You cannot have high returns and low risk. So risks are also higher, but if you take adequate amount of safeguards and do proper research, then you can obviously make much better money in terms of equities as compared to any other asset class.
Sir, I have two questions for you. The fight, the unrest which is going on in Middle East, do you think it is fight for freedom or democracy, or is it fight for getting control over crude? Because it's funded by USA, and USA wants to be the big daddy and wants to get control over the entire crude. So don't you see crude going from 100 to 150, 200 per barrel, and then we facing inflation as a concern, maybe in a bad situation? And the second question is, sir, should we be invested in the telecom sector? I want a fundamental view on that. With the current scenario, with the current scams going on, the average revenue falling, and with few more concerns, should we be invested in telecom sector, or can we shift to banking sector with UID coming into picture? Everybody will be having a bank account. So what's your view on these two questions?
Taking the second question first, we are not very positive on telecom. We would rather recommend switching on to banking. So that's very briefly, and there are within banks there are large banks which will be the obvious beneficiaries of the overall economic growth. So you should be looking at large banks in the private sector, the private sector banks as we say, rather than the PSUs, the public sector banks. But yes, sectorally we do prefer banking over telecom. So the switch can definitely be made. That's what we opine. As far as the first question is concerned, we are no experts at finding out whether US is funding it or whether it's a fight for democracy. Looking at the kind of revolts which are happening right now across countries, and the news which are coming in as to the state of people which is there right now in those countries, we think this was long overdue. It was boiling up for several years, and just one person being killed has sparked off this. So there was some reason which was needed to for this boiling or the pressure cooker to open up, and that has actually happened. If you look at the plight of the people there, or the levels at which the economies are, how badly they are doing, we think that the people were really oppressed. People did not have really opportunities there. So to that extent, what we believe is that these revolts are for more freedom, for more democracy. And beyond that, I think US funding all of these, and we are no experts at doing that, and we don't have any view. But if this has to boil over to maybe big countries like Saudi Arabia, we can have a circumstance where crude price can go up to 150 and beyond. But if that doesn't happen, then let me give you one more perspective. Saudi Arabia and the oil countries as a bloc, they themselves do not want the crude price to remain high for a sustainable period of time. Because if that has to happen, there can be a structural shift in demand. And that is what they want to guard against. There are alternate fuels which are coming up in a big way. Gas is there, shale gas is something which US is banking on hugely. So they are concerned, the OPEC countries or maybe the oil producing countries are very much concerned that if oil prices remain sustainably high for a period of time, the demand, there could be a structural shift in demand away from crude, and that is what they don't want. So, to give a short answer, we think yes, it's a fight for democracy. We are not able to throw any light on whether US is funding it or whether there are any ulterior motives. But if the crude has to remain sustainably high at 150 and beyond, it will be very negative for India. We feel it will not happen. So that's basically how do I answer. How shall I answer?
Can we completely exit telecom sector, or are there few stocks left to be?
If you have a compulsion of staying in telecom, Bharti is the stock which we would recommend you to be in, because that's the company which is going overseas and doing several good things. But beyond that, companies which are focused in the domestic market, as he rightly said, the competition is so intense. I think, and the avenues to grow at a very fast pace and that to have a profitable growth are very few. So maybe if you have to stay, Bharti is the only option. But I think banking, according to us, is a better sector.
Thank you, sir.
Can you highlight something on derivative sector?
Derivatives, yes, it's one more method of one more method of playing into the stock market, not investing. Derivatives is basically an instrument by which you can take an exposure, a higher exposure than the cash market, and it's also a method of hedging your bets. So there are two reasons why people do trade in derivatives. One is that they only have to pay the margin money, so to that extent they can take a bigger position with the same amount of money. That in fact acts to the negative some point of time, because people generally tend to trade beyond their means. So it is very advisable. You can trade in derivatives, but then you should not go beyond your means. So that is first thing. The second thing is people do take derivative positions to hedge their positions in the cash market, and it is a very, very good hedging tool where you can do away with the market risk and basically play only on the company risk which are there. So I think it's a good strategy to trade in derivatives, but within our means, and we should not overtrade, and that will definitely help us in reducing our market risk to a significant extent, because that can be used as an effective hedging tool.
In my view is that I think if you're starting first time in equities, I think it is always advisable to do not to do a derivatives trade.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it comes with a huge risk. It's a leverage risk. For example, you're buying a stock at 100 rupees, you just have to pay a premium of 10 rupees. So you can buy 10 into 100.
Yes.
So people always get swayed away with saying that I need to pay only small amount, but why should I pay the full amount? I think it becomes a huge leverage trade, and actually a lot of people in the markets, retail investors lose money on derivative trades. Right. Because first is that knowledge of derivatives is very limited to brokers. I don't think any investors understands the risk of derivatives. In our organization, what we try to do is that we also look at age category. When I started speaking about risk associated with stocks, for example, any investor coming about 50 to 55 years and want to put money on derivative trades, we actually don't allow them to do it. And we have a approval process in place that every proposal comes to me to sign. And we look at the background of the investor. If he has a good experience in the markets, then only we actually sign off and allow them to do trade. Because I think derivatives are, if you look at the global meltdown happened, I think one of the tool of destruction was derivatives. Yes. Okay, let me tell you that. And I've seen all these complex structures in my career. I think I advise, if you are first investors in equity markets, please don't get into derivatives. I think it can be a tool of destruction of wealth.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
It's a double-edged sword.
Normally in Nifty, there are many trades that happen. That I would like to know how they invest in Nifty.
Yeah, Nifty, I think the only method of investing is through derivatives, because there are Nifty futures in which you can trade. So if you want to invest in a Nifty, yes, that's the only way of investing in a Nifty, through derivatives. But what our advice would be is that rather than betting on Nifty as a whole, you may try to either play the market. If you want to play the market as a whole, you can either play it through mutual funds, which is a much safer way of investing, or else you take bets on some large companies which are very well reputed, and so that the risk which you face, even in a market meltdown, is significantly lower. Those companies, the prices of those companies will fall much lower, and the Nifty might fall much faster. So I think it's always better to play the market either through mutual funds if you are a first-time investor, or invest in some large companies which are very good management companies, so that you can have a good night's sleep.
We can also look at the index funds. There are index funds. If you really think that Nifty as a index will go up, then you can always do an SIP on index funds, or you can put a bulk money in index funds.
What I have heard is of Nifty Bees.
Yeah, Nifty Bees is an index fund. It's index fund, so you can start money on that.
Okay, very shortly, we've got two questions to be accommodated. One of the gentlemen who has never spoken at all for the evening. We'll take one question there, and we'll take one question here to be wrapping up. We'll take one question very shortly.
हिंदी में बोलूँगा. आपने अभी बताया कि भारतीय एयरटेल वो टेलीकम्युनिकेशन में अच्छा है. 2009 में मैं ट्रेड करता था. अभी मैं एज ए ब्रोकर ट्रेड करता था. 380 एंड 480. तभी निफ्टी 2700 था. आज 5400, 6500 निफ्टी जाके आया. फिर भी भारतीय एयरटेल 370 तक अटक गया. तो इन्वेस्टर अगर पैसा लगा के रखेगा तो उसको कभी पैसा रिटर्न आएगा.
So I think you did not hear my answer properly. As I said, the first statement was, if there is a compulsion of investing in telecom, if you want to remain in telecom, because the gentleman asked me a second time about telecom, so I understood that he likes the telecom sector and wants to remain invested in that. तो अगर किसी को टेलीकॉम सेक्टर में इन्वेस्टेड रहना है, उनको एक्सपोजर लेना है, तो भारती इज द बेस्ट वे. बट माई लास्ट स्टेटमेंट वॉज बैंकिंग इन ऑलवेज प्रीफर्ड ओवर टेलीकॉम. सो बैंकिंग इज बेटर देन भारती. So that was the advice which I gave, and I completely agree. Bharti over the last 1 or 2 years has underperformed. But at the same time, we do not have to penalize a company, and we need to look at holistically. Look at the time from when Bharti had started off, and the kind of returns which it has given. So it's nothing against Bharti. It's basically the sector which has become more competitive, and the fundamentals that way because of that have deteriorated. So if the sector has to be bought into, it has to be bought in through Bharti. But obviously banking is much more preferred as compared to telecom right now.
We'll take the last quick question.
Hello. Yes, I would like to ask you, what is stop loss and how to play with the stop loss, and how to come to the conclusion that this is the stop loss.
See, stop loss is basically the price at which you should square off your trade. That is briefly the definition of a stop loss. So if you have bought something at 100 rupees, your target is that the stock price will reach 120. But you are not very sure about the market risk, because markets have a history of fluctuating, and they can always go down even if you are expecting it to go up. So if the market moves against you, or if the stock price moves against your expectation, then you should have a particular amount of money or particular level of stop loss at which you will cut off your trade, whatever be the case, because that's the amount of money which is the most which you can lose in a particular trade, right? So you have got 1 lakh rupees of investments. You say, okay, at most I can have a loss of 10,000 rupees. Beyond that, I would not like to lose in this trade. So you can put a stop loss of 90 rupees, and at 90 rupees your trade will get squared off. So your trade will get, the shares will get sold at 90 rupees. So that's a method of limiting your loss. At the same time, if the stock goes up, you can always make the money which you want to desire, which you desire to make. But stop loss is basically very important when you do trading. When you are looking at short-term bets, the markets in the short term can move either ways, because it's very violent and very fluctuating. So if the market moves beyond in a direction which is different from what you are thinking, you can at least restrict your loss to a particular amount which you can bear. If you don't put any stop loss and a 100 rupee stock goes to 50, you lose 50% of investments. So that's why people do put a stop loss, but this is basically a thing which is associated with short-term trading, not with a longer-term investment.
In case of longer-term investment, for example, somebody buys Infosys at 3,300 rupees, then whether he should look for the stop loss at 3,000 every time, or he should cut off when the market goes below 3,000?
See, basically when you do fundamental investing, you always know slightly more better about the company. And you have fixed a target of maybe say 4,000 or 3,800 or whatever it is, based on your assumptions and your understanding as to how the company will perform over a 1 year period. Now in the intermediate term, there can be fluctuations in the markets. Like suppose an unforeseen event happens which impacts the market and the stock price goes down. But until and unless the fundamentals of the company have not changed, you should not sell the company even at a lower price. Because it's market. It's not that the stock price cannot go down in the intermediate term. But if you have done your research well, and if the fundamentals of the company have not changed, you can be very well sure that your target price of 3,800 or 4,000 will be achieved. So if you have invested with a longer term view, which normally fundamental research is associated with, we would rather prefer not to put a stop loss. But at the same time, if the fundamentals change, something has happened which will change the fundamentals of the company, you should even sell off the company at 2,900. You should not wait for long, because what you had expected is not going to happen now. So in that case, you can square over. Otherwise, stop loss is not preferred in fundamental investing.
Thank you.
I'm sure we've got a lot more questions that need to be answered and responded to, but with the constraints of time, these are as many we could accommodate, and we have taken more than the due for this evening. And we'd like to acknowledge once again, very specially, kindly put your hands together for the gentlemen at the table, Mr. Dipen Shah and Mr. B. Gopkumar. And we'd like to say with a little token of appreciation from CNBC TV 18 and Network 18, the publishers, to everything you wanted to know about stock market investing. We'd like to thank the publishers, CNBC TV 18 and Network 18, bringing forth the book launch as well as the event to be celebrated this evening here at Crossword. A special mention and a special thank you to Kotak Securities for making this event possible. And finally, about the copy this evening, if in case you make a purchase of the copy, everything you wanted to know about stock market investing, don't forget you are entitled to a coupon which brings forth an opportunity to open a DMAT account free of cost this evening. So those of you who would be interested in opening an account, don't miss out on this opportunity. Copies are available at the counter. Thank you, because without each one of you this evening, it would not have been such a grand book launch. So thank you. That goes as an extension to each one of you, customers, members and guests here at Crossword. And we look forward to you joining us back again when we come back with another event from Crossword. Thank you.